Water and Sanitation Deputy Minister Seitlholo yesterday led South Africa's delegation to the Climate Resilient Investment Conference in Lesotho. It's a high-level event which aims to attract investment for 36 key water infrastructure projects across the Orange-Senqu River Basin, which promotes climate resilience and sustainable water management in countries like South Africa, Lesotho, Namibia and Botswana. Let's get an update on that meeting with Deputy Minister live from Maseru on the outcomes of the conference and what it actually means for South Africa. Deputy Minister, good morning. Thanks for your time and thanks for joining us. What was maybe perhaps just some of the key outcomes from the Climate Resilient Investment Conference and specifically how they benefit South Africa's water infrastructure goals?
Good morning, Iman, and good morning to the viewers. You will excuse my voice. We are recovering from a flu. Well, look, I think the delegation was very clear in terms of what we've identified as challenges. And I think for us, as South Africa, we always have to emphasize the point that we are a water scarce country. That is why it is important that we've entered into transboundary partnerships such as the Lesotho Highlands Water Scheme and also our commitment to the Arasacom Commission, where we are active partners. And there are a number of issues. We know that the projects that you are referring to need financing, and that was the point and the purpose of the conference yesterday, to really rally investors to come and invest in bankable water infrastructure projects. We know that with population growth and with water demand increasing, we are going to need resilient infrastructure that will be able to really accommodate that demand and make sure that we're able to continue with this particular transboundary engagements with Lesotho and other member states, in order for us to be able to, of course, invest in the infrastructure that will be able to provide us with the much needed water in our country.
So South Africa, and you know this better than most, already faces challenges with aging infrastructure as well as unequal water access. How does this regional cooperation through Arasacom translate into real improvements and the lived experience here at home?
I think what we need to admit as a reality is that the minister often emphasizes the point that in the country, our water balance is quite right from a raw water point of view, in terms of our rivers and our dams. The biggest challenge, and which was raised also quite significantly by countries such as Botswana and Lesotho, is that as it relates to non-revenue water, that is the clean water that we are losing, which is at over 50% in South Africa, that we are losing due to ailing infrastructure, illegal connections, leaks that are not being fixed on time, and so forth and so on, which then begs the question, when we do these investor conferences, when we enter into these partnerships with certain countries where we share basins, and we are able to build these mega infrastructure projects to secure our water resources, what then happens with the issues of addressing the leaks, addressing the aging infrastructure, addressing the illegal connections? Because those are the challenges that we as a country have to be able to be at the forefront of fighting. When we held the water and sanitation in Durban, we've had very blunt conversations about the state of our municipalities and how the infrastructure has not been maintained and operated for a number of years, which has led to the reality that we are facing with municipalities that, residents rather in municipalities that go weeks, months, and even some years without water due to infrastructure. So yeah, it's the question of, we're building mega infrastructure, but what are we doing at a local level in making sure that the infrastructure is able to actually, meet the demand that is required by South Africans?
Well, let's have you answer your own question. What are you doing?
Well, the reality is that we are looking at the amendment of the Water Services, our Water Services Act, which looks at introducing a licensing for water services providers. It's a key legislative amendment because what it does is, it takes what we are currently doing with Mfuleni in terms of the special purpose vehicle and really introduces a component where water services authorities or municipalities in this instance are able to really appoint licensed water services providers that will be able to take over the water services mandate from the Water Services Authority. And that licensing is important because as we continue with our green, blue, and no drop reports, when those particular facts come and to us, we are then able to have a conversation with specific municipalities that are facing significant challenges to say, look, you need to enter into a Section 76 a conversation where council needs to take a decision that you now need to appoint a licensed water services provider to undertake your water services mandate, because clearly, as both a water services provider and a water services authority, those things, you cannot be a player and a referee at the same time, which is currently what is happening in the country.
And again, that's a subject I think we have to come back on, because it's just, historical, and it happens, it's there in the system. We're just losing too much water, purified, good, usable water, because of bad infrastructure. In the greater Bloemfontein water intervention, we have seen repeated complaints from rural residents about poor water access, right? So that's at the very basic level. How can these projects justify exporting water when communities nearby are still struggling with basic supply?
So part of the conversations that we've been having, if you look at, for example, the province such as Limpopo, where there are residents that live nearby dams but don't have access to water. This is something that during the conversations that we've had at the beginning of the 7th administration, and the minister emphasized the point to say there should never be in any way, shape, or form infrastructure that is built that passes communities, and yet those communities do not have access to water. So what we're doing with the projects that we've already unlocked as a department is that where there are people, where there are communities where this infrastructure is going to be built, the first point of departure needs to be that those particular communities, we have to be able to build a reticulation system or network that will be able to give them access to the resource that passes them by. I mean, the Lesotho-Botswana transfer project, for example, that seeks to build another dam in Lesotho and a 700-kilometer pipeline from Lesotho to Botswana. That pipeline, once it materializes, is going to pass through a lot of communities in both Lesotho, South Africa, and going into Botswana. So the question then has to be, will there be any beneficiation from a project point of view in as far as those communities are concerned, particularly given the dire state of the lack of access to water by rural communities in South Africa, which is something that the department has emphasized to say we need to work very hard to see how we can begin to come up with innovative ideas and solutions on how do we grant them access to water to communities that have never had water, for 31 years.